Hello and welcome. This is a podcast where I talk about whatever I want. I'm Johnnie and I'm a librarian. Let's talk about the birth of the digital. So essentially talking about digital images. So I remember, my first digital camera. I had an Intel, it was like a little plasticky camera. It took 2 or 4 batteries. Didn't have a flash, but it took a less than 3 megapixel picture. And I thought that was, the most amazing thing to have a digital picture, because I grew up where if you wanted something instant, you had a Polaroid instant camera. Flash went off and you had to wait for the picture to develop. That was your photo. Even in 1997, scanners weren't that widely available to convert analog to digital. Now they're everywhere. You would have to pay a service or go to I think you could go to Rite Aid and they could scan things in for you. And there are scanners here you can go. I know Target has one. I've scanned photos before. They're analog photos. And the digital photo it's right now, it's everywhere. It's on your phone. It's online. You're getting all this information through, left and right, and just in front of you, behind you, videos, everything. You're being bombarded with all this content, and everyone becomes a content creator with photography. And photography is very much a learned. You have to learn how to take a good photo. It doesn't always come naturally. You observe good photos. You know techniques. You understand how light interacts with things. And that's really important. The beginning of the internet is always such a fun topic for me, because it was, I was not exposed to the internet until around 97. And then 97 was still, the age of dithering images and very small images online. But what I did was, images that I had access to all these images. I go to an artist's website, a music artist or something, and save all these images. Right click, save it. Sometimes it'd be chopped up, spliced, and I'd save it on my diskette. And I'd have diskettes for different things. So they never held much. Was it 1.4 megabytes? So these pictures were very small. Nowadays, most decent cameras can take a 40 megapixel camera, which is a picture, which is huge. My second digital camera was a Sony Cybershot. That was 3.2 megapixels. I still remember that. And that was a great camera. It wasn't perfect, but I've always liked digital cameras and enjoyed taking photos. I have a nicer digital camera. I'm partial to Sony. But Canon makes really good stuff. Nikon makes good stuff. As part of my job as like a multimedia librarian, we circulate equipment. I enjoy working with all the cameras we have. Nikon makes really good stuff. Sony makes really good stuff. Panasonic, Fuji, really good. The way digital items that we create, the equipment that we use has come so far. I am a fan of analog cameras, though, and I have a small collection, probably about 25 cameras. Most of them are German-made, manual cameras, rangefinders, SLRs. I'm partial to them, and I've used them. My favorite one probably to use is the Canonet Q7 III, I believe. Throw that thing in auto mode, and it takes black and white photos wonderfully. I took it to New York City. I loved it. You're on the go, snap, 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 and the pictures come out amazing. And I I take black and white photography because I can develop it myself. It's fairly easy to do it yourself, and they just scan in. Through trial and error, I figured out the best things, like one time I accidentally left the water on when I was rinsing the film, and the water, sometimes in your house, it goes from cold, or you have it on like lukewarm, and then all of a sudden it gets hot because someone did something, flushed or something, and my film got really warped. So cold water, not warm, cold water is always best when you're rinsing your film for that 10, 20 minutes afterwards. It didn't ruin something crazy special, but it was frustrating. But I have all the equipment just to to develop my own film. I just can't print it. I need to scan it in, the analog to the digital, and that's where things get really interesting for me. The bridge between the analog and the digital. So digital things, digital objects, are not very special. They're just kind of there. What makes them special is findability, metadata, and tagging. There's a lot of photos, especially if you upload them to Flickr, which is sort of almost a dying service. It used to be pretty popular. Now a lot of people don't even know what Flickr is anymore. It uploads the data from the camera, so what camera was used, the f-stop, things like that, location data, and that's really important, and that's how photos are organized. It's great that your iPhone will take photos and organize them for you, sort them. It can do facial recognition. Newer cameras can recognize faces too. You can set them to track faces and learn faces. But without that extra data, pictures are nothing when you're trying to organize them, trying to sort them. It's like a box of unknown. You won't know until you stumble on it. You look, you flip through. And that's one of the problems of analog items, too, and digital. You don't know if there's no finding aid. They're kind of lost. So anything I put online, if I don't tag it, whether it's a podcast or a video, if it's not tagged properly, it won't find an audience. It won't find the information seeker, because that's ultimately what you want. You want the person who's seeking to find it. And how do you find it? You find it with tags, like a book. You have a call number, whether it's Dewey, whether it's Library of Congress. You go find the book on the shelf. Hopefully it's on the shelf. You locate it, and you found it. But also with that, what did you do? You didn't search by the call number. You searched by the title, the author, a keyword, a subject. You did that. You needed those things attached to that in the catalog to find that item. So organizing things is really important when you're putting things online, so they can be found and they can be appreciated. Or if you're doing something like my last podcast episode was about the 4 images, and those are 4 special images. And if I don't tag that properly, if I don't tag it with the artists or show you what they are, you'd kind of be at a loss. So I provided those pictures as a visual to help you understand what I was talking about, what I was looking at when I was talking about them. Let's see. Where was I going with this? The metadata. So the metadata, a lot of it is what we assign to it. So we assign, this is a portrait. This is a black and white photo. This is a, grainy picture. This is family, friend, whatever. You need to tag that for yourself. But if you're tagging things for other people, you need to think of things. And one of the things we do in the library world and in the museum world is controlled vocabulary. And they also do this there's MESH, which is medical subject headings. These are agreed upon terms to find things. And it's really an interesting concept. So Library of Congress, there's certain keywords that you use. You don't use, and certain terms change, of course, like you have Negro or Black or African American. Terms change over time and are re-indexed, and those indexes help you find things. So if you say, oh, look, it's like using a thesaurus, and there are, like the APA thesaurus, the American Psychological Association thesaurus, has these lovely things called scope notes. And scope notes will tell you when a term was codified or introduced in the literature and when the association agreed that this is what we're going to index things with. Sometimes it's the biggest example that I can think of is people aren't called Asperger's anymore. They don't have Asperger syndrome. That has gone away. It's now on the spectrum of autism. And so if you're looking for Asperger's, it's going to redirect you to spectrum, autism on the spectrum. Neurodivergent is the newest term that's out there. So anyone that falls in that category, neurodivergent, there's something not quite, it's on the scale. It could be anything from, inherent issues with learning disabilities that go along with that to, highly functioning, quirky person. It's all over and I've seen lots of different, especially working in academia, lots of people on the spectrum, and they're all different. So these terms change. And that's, these finding aids, these thesauri, really help you kind of locate these things. There's no such thing for throwing things up on the internet. And nobody wants to be bothered with it unless it's some algorithm that's built in that corrects data. If I'm talking about a cancer study or treatments and, I'm using all these crazy words, like words that aren't really agreed upon, like I'm saying metastatic, I'm saying, oncology, I'm saying, all these different things. But if you're looking for cancer, it's not pulling up, it's pulling up cancer. You need to look for ones that are, if I was looking for metastatic, it's only going to pull up metastatic. Unless there's something in the background saying, if you type in this, it will also pull up this, this, and this. And certain search engines can do that. A lot of them cannot at this time. Of course, they're always getting better and always developing, but it's like whatever you put out there isn't looked at as closely as you might think. Which is the same with pictures. So with digital images, I remember saving lots and lots of images and organizing them into folders and not changing their names, but I would rely on the overarching folder to tell me what's in, what's in there. If I was making a website and I wanted wallpaper, I was obsessed with tiled wallpaper at one point for websites, and I would find all this stuff to that I would kind of, I'd like it, I wouldn't like it, I'd try it out and see if it's too busy, if it's not too busy, or I'd lighten it up or whatever, modify it. So I had a wallpaper folder, and these file names were all over the place. They were like 1080, ABCD, whatever. A lot of times when we take pictures, they're numbered in sequence, so it'll be like DSC 1098.jpg or .raw or whatever proprietary raw camera file there is. They're usually proprietary. Canon, Nikon, they're all different. So changing the human interaction with these digital items is really important. It's important to help for us humans to help other humans find things, especially if that's what our intention is. We want them to be found. So, it's up to us to bring warmth to digital things by putting a human touch, even if it's just metadata. Nothing will force metadata on something. It's always an interactive process. It's like indexing. So you have an article, you read the article, you write down all the proper nouns and the main subject things that it's talking about, throw them up on a board. How many times do they occur? Let's talk about it. Let's argue about it, and let's pick like the top 25 things we're going to index this with. That's how indexing works. Old school indexing, new indexing. I mean, there's ways of ranking things by word count, by relevance, which is essentially how many times that word pops up whenever you do a search. It's typically the one that has the most words that will pop up. If you're talking about seagulls, and I want articles on seagulls, and there's a 1,000-page thesis on seagull mating habits, and it mentions seagulls, 3,000, 4,000 times. That's going to be number one for relevance because of the hit count for the words is going to be there. And that's usually how that works. And of course, there are some fancy algorithms that also help too, but that's the gist of it. That's what relevance is. It ranks it by word count. So whenever you're Googling or you're using DuckDuckGo or Bing, it does that, but it also puts paid links first. So it's modifying your what you see, which is contributing to consumer behavior, which maybe you find them annoying. Usually they tell you if they're ads, but it can really mess up what you click on. And certain sites can pay more to be moved up into your search. There are services that people pay. So using search engines to find stuff is not, you take it with a grain of salt. Use it to help you. A lot of times we don't care. We just want to get at the information. And AI, it does the same thing in a way, from what I can tell. Of course, this is me speculating. But I used ChatGPT earlier this week because I was trying to think of one of the first databases. It was a business database, and it was very clunky, and you had these things called blue cards that were this was like a physical index, and you would use these to pull up certain subject areas. And I was trying to think of the name. I couldn't figure it out. Then I said, what were the first 5 databases ever? And number 5 was the one I was looking for, Dialog, Dialog. It still exists, and it's usually meant for medical and business community. It's really specific stuff. I don't know how much full text is there. It's kind of there, but it's not one that most academic. It's mainly for business use, and that's how it was born, really, for businesses to research. And these things are, again, the indexing, the human element, to warm up the digital. So you create this little human campfire of brainwaves and thoughts to label the digital, because it's so cold, it's so off and on. If you look at a digital signal, it's choppy, it's squared, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. Whereas analog waves are, they flow, and there's a gradual gradation to them. It's not binary by any means. It's lovely. So, and it's easier. I mean, as far as the way us humans interact with things, we're used to the analog, not the digital. The digital is this thing that's been worked on in the latter half of the 19th century, no, 20th century, 20th century, the latter half of the 1900s, with DARPA and all that stuff becoming digital, and then the birth of the digital, birth of the internet, and how things have been used to connect people, which is, good and bad. Where am I going with this? I'm talking about digital images, and it just keeps going on. It's like that human element is just needed. So, that's that. But it's funny when I look at my behavior of like saving pictures. I still do that. I still save images, even though I could always look them up. And I still have some images I've saved from when I was doing web work in like 1998, 1999. And I've saved them, and I look back at them, I'm like, wow, this is like a nostalgic image, it's so bad. It just brings back memories. And a lot of us, especially, later, people now, they don't touch photos unless it's something they buy or they're going through their parents' or grandparents' stuff. We don't have a lot of printed photos. And that's kind of, I like printed photos. They're kind of tactile and they're enjoyable. It's nostalgic. But with the physical, you have to digitize those things if you want to save them, because it doesn't take much to ruin a photo. Get it wet, burn it up, lose it. So converting that, conserving it, preserving it is kind of important. I have some photos from my family from when my grandfather was in the Korean War. He gave me his album that he collected photos in, and it's one of my most treasured possessions. It really is. And the photos are remarkable. It's another world. This was in, 1954, 1955, and it's like a world away, and the fact that he was there fighting in Korea is really, wow, it's amazing. And these photos, I've digitized them, but having the analog ones is so special, because these are ones that he would send home. They're very small squares. I should actually show that. They're not so personal that I can't show them to people, because they are very interesting, and I can share what he said about them when he went over them with me before he passed. But that's something else. But anyway, this was interesting, talking about digital images and incorporating like the human element. I think that's really important. The story behind it, the metadata, the tagging, those are fancy terms for just locating things. So anyway, thank you for listening to my library ramble.